Do you constantly feel pressured to improve, to do more, to be better? This obsession with self-improvement is leaving us drained and depressed. But there is a way to escape this tyranny and rediscover the joy of simply being. Join us on this journey toward a healthy balance between self-improvement and well-being. If this resonates with you, subscribe and like this video to receive more content that will inspire you to find a healthy balance between self-improvement and well-being. We live in an age of abundance, with access to virtually everything we desire. Yet depression and burnout are also abundant. Why does this culture of self-cultivation leave us so exhausted and depressed? Immersed in this culture of hyperactivity, we find ourselves in a state of compulsive effort, with little time to connect with ourselves and others. The normalized myth that each of us is merely an individual, struggling to achieve private goals, increasingly distances us from the vital aspects of what we truly are and need to be. Researchers like Tim Kasser have found that the principles of corporate capitalism, self-interest, desire for money, success, consumerism, and competition lead to mental health issues. Yet, we continue to endorse and embrace this culture. When was the last time you felt truly satisfied? This constant pursuit of self-improvement leaves us fundamentally drained and depressed. Philosopher Michel Foucault wrote about the disciplinary society, where people are ordered to behave according to rules. But in his later years, Foucault observed a more specific form of discipline, the technologies of the self, where individuals voluntarily subject themselves to self-improvement practices. Here, we are not compelled to follow strict procedures, but submit to them on our own. Byung-Chul Han argues that this new form of control, where people monitor and optimize themselves, is even more effective in extracting resources than the surveillance of disciplinary societies. Instead of a society telling people what they must do, this new form of power encourages them to self-optimize. The neoliberal subject sees themselves as a project to be constantly worked on and improved. This pressure to always be more and do more leads to a kind of culturally induced narcissism. As Stephen Lukes writes, narcissism and sociopathy are not just illnesses, but effective strategies in contemporary society. This constant self-reference and monitoring of performance and self-image turn into an unbridled race within oneself, which can eventually lead to burnout. Burnout should not be seen as a failure to fully master oneself, but as a symptom of this compulsion for achievement. Depression and burnout are the canaries in the coal mine, showing the destructiveness of this culture of self-cultivation. This doesn't mean that self-improvement is inherently maladaptive, but when it enters a hellish cycle of excessive self-reference and exhaustion, it is likely the result of self-exploitation rather than healthy, intrinsically motivated self-improvement. Alienation is inevitable when our sense of inner worth becomes oriented by externally imposed standards of competitive achievement and acquisition. We struggle to answer the question, "Who am I?" And this is an important question to resolve if we truly want to improve ourselves. As Erich Fromm argues in Escape from Freedom, freedom itself does not necessarily bring us happiness, as we live under the illusion that we know what we want. In reality, we often want what we should want, a root of the compulsive self-improvement that turns us into automatons living under the illusion of being obstinate individuals. It is in simple spontaneity, seen in artists and children, that we find the cure. Spontaneous activity does not adhere to strict self-optimization, but is an embrace of activity for its own sake. Games, art, time with friends, and a gradual slowdown. This is the only way we can overcome the terror of loneliness without sacrificing the integrity of the self. As Byung-Chul Han notes, the gift of listening is utterly inaccessible to the hyperactive ego that must shut itself off to constantly measure and optimize within itself. It is only in moments of intrinsic focus, when we do things for ourselves, that we can escape burnout. This need to be constantly focused on ourselves and monitor our performance and self-image turns into an unbridled race within ourselves. This compulsive self-reference eventually could lead to burnout or, as Byung-Chul Han describes, a state of ocular fatigue, where the exhausted ego wears itself out so much that the fatigue comes from the redundancy and recurrence of the ego. Burnout is often treated as an annoyance or a failure to fully master oneself, being seen as a weakness that must be promptly addressed to not fall short of our journey toward self-improvement. However, I think that burnout and depression should be seen more as the very symptoms of this compulsion for achievement, the tiredness of ourselves. As Arenberg points out, this achievement society is the root of this increase in depression. Depression began its rise when the disciplinary model for behavior broke down and then invited us to undertake personal initiative, ordering us to be ourselves. The depressed individual is unable to measure up, tired of having to become themselves. It is this voluntary self-management and exploitation that gives rise to a fractured soul. The key to escaping this negative spiral is to find a healthy balance between self-improvement and well-being. This doesn't mean abandoning personal growth altogether, but learning to practice it in a lighter, more natural way. A more balanced approach might involve activities that are intrinsically motivating, such as creative hobbies, enjoyable exercise, and time with friends and family. Instead of focusing exclusively on performance goals and self-image, we should cultivate a deeper connection with ourselves and others. Buddhist philosophy offers valuable insights on how to achieve this balance. Concepts like mindfulness meditation and accepting transience can help us be more present in the moment, reducing the compulsion for constant self-improvement. Moreover, Buddhist philosophy emphasizes the interconnection of all things, contrasting with the Western notion of the self-sufficient individual. This sense of belonging to a larger web of life can alleviate the feeling of isolation that often accompanies burnout. Author Richard Sennett also offers an interesting perspective. He contrasts the culture of narcissism with the culture of solidarity, arguing that we need to open up more to others instead of being stuck in our self-consciousness. Sennett highlights the importance of cultivating meaningful human bonds and a sense of purpose that goes beyond the individual. Another antidote to this culture of excessive self-cultivation is finding ways to engage with causes larger than ourselves. Writer and activist Robert Jensen argues that individualism is a poison to the soul, as it isolates us from a deeper connection with humanity and the natural world. He advocates that we move from an individualistic view to an ecocentric view, where we see ourselves as an integral part of a broader system. This shift in perspective can help us find a sense of purpose and meaning that goes beyond the mere pursuit of personal achievements. When we connect with causes larger than ourselves, such as social justice or environmental sustainability, we can experience a greater sense of purpose and belonging. Moreover, the philosophy of slow living can offer another balanced approach. Instead of chasing ever more ambitious goals, this philosophy invites us to slow down, savor the small pleasures of life, and cultivate meaningful relationships. It reminds us that happiness is not necessarily linked to success or productivity, but rather to the quality of our experiences and connections. Another important aspect is recognizing the importance of leisure and free time. Philosopher Joseph Pieper argues that leisure is not simply the absence of work, but a mental disposition that allows us to be open to the transcendent and the sacred. He advocates that we need periods of contemplation and decompression to maintain our mental health. Therefore, the challenge is to find a healthy balance between self-improvement and well-being. This doesn't mean completely abandoning personal growth, but rather practicing this journey in a lighter, more natural way, where we can connect with what truly matters to us. Some practical strategies that can help us in this quest for balance include cultivating intrinsically motivating activities, such as creative hobbies and enjoyable exercise, dedicating time to meaningful relationships and community connection, practicing mindfulness meditation and other techniques that foster presence and acceptance, engaging in causes larger than ourselves, such as social justice or environmental sustainability, adopting a slow living philosophy, valuing the small pleasures and quality of life, setting aside periods of leisure and contemplation, allowing ourselves to be open to the transcendent. As we walk this path of balance, we can escape the tyranny of self-cultivation and rediscover the joy of simply being. Only when we accept our humanity in all its complexity can we truly flourish. If you resonate with this journey towards a balance between self-improvement and well-being, subscribe and like this video to receive more inspiring content. In this era of constant pressure for self-improvement, it is crucial that we find a path that allows us to cultivate personal growth in a healthy and sustainable way. By abandoning the obsession with achievement and the compulsion for self-optimization, we can rediscover the joy of simply being. This journey towards balance is not easy, but it is essential for our mental health and well-being. By cultivating intrinsically motivating activities, meaningful connections, and a sense of greater purpose, we can escape the tyranny of self-cultivation and thrive in a more full and authentic way. I invite you to join us in this exploration. Together, we can find a path that allows us to grow without losing ourselves, where self-improvement and well-being walk side by side. Subscribe and like to receive more content that will inspire you on this transformative journey.